Hello, Daphne here with an amusing video for you titled, What Happens When Traveling the World with a Nick Nolte Lookalike. One of my second half travel adventures Facebook group members commented that my husband looks like Nick Nolte. That prompted me to think back on all the years when he has been mistaken for that famous actor. And there have been some very, very amusing stories that have happened all over the world, not just here in the United States. After all, Nick is a very prominent and well-known and excellent American movie actor, but he is apparently known very well overseas because we have many stories to tell from abroad about how my husband was taken for Nick Nolte. What an entertaining journey this has been. No matter where our travels have taken us in the world, there have been numerous people we don't even know, who come up to my husband and tell him that he is Nick Nolte and they want his autograph. I cannot tell you how many times this has happened in airports and restaurants, just almost any place you can imagine. But the following are some of the stories that have amused me the most, and I can tell you in no uncertain terms that my husband is by no means amused like I am when he is taken for Nick Nolte. But I'm sure you'll get a kick out of some of these stories. One year, my husband and I were off with a friend to see the Super Bowl. Richard was walking ahead of me when all of a sudden, well, he was walking towards the stadium and he was quite far ahead of me. And these two girls, I'm watching this from behind, these two girls rush up to him, each one grabs one of his arms, and they lock arms with him. And at that very instant, they have a friend take a picture. Before Richard could say, I am not Nick Nolte, the two girls were off and on their way. So I wonder if in future times, if they looked at the picture and said, oh, well, I'm not so sure that's Nick after all, but we'll never know. Okay, our next adventure I'd love to describe to you happened in Peru. This was a trip that Richard and I had looked forward to a great deal. We were going to see some friends there. And in Lima, we were invited to their exclusive private club for dinner. It was a cold evening, so Richard and I checked our coats with a gal stationed near the front door for that purpose. Not speaking a word of English, this hat-check girl shouted out in her foreign accent, Nick! Nick! as she pointed at my husband. Well, Richard doesn't speak Spanish, but all he could do was just smile at her. There was no way for him to tell this admiring young lady that he was not the movie star she thought he was. This is among my favorites. On a trip to London, we stayed at our favorite hotel, the St. James Hotel and Club. It's right near Buckingham Palace, and it's just a wonderful, wonderful hotel. After checking in, the bellman turned to my husband and said, May I take your luggage to the room, Mr. Nolte? My husband replied, But I am not Nick Nolte. The return mark was hysterical. I understand, said the bellman. In other words, he thought Nick had checked in under an assumed name, as many celebrities do during their travels, so as not to be recognized. That was really so, I don't know, that tickled my funny bone, that situation, because the bellman never did realize that Richard was actually not Nick Nolte. Another time, Richard was on a flight to Jackson Hole, Wyoming. I was not with him on this trip. But it was really fascinating what happened. He was up in first class. All of a sudden, a gal from coach came rushing up and plopped herself down next to my husband. "You are Nick Nolte, aren't you?" she said boldly and proudly. Even though my husband insisted he wasn't, she wouldn't take no for an answer. And then before departing, she said, she looked him right in the eye, and this I really had a hard time believing. "You are lying." Now that's an example of the not so good side of being a celebrity. And I can only imagine, if you were the real Nick Nolte, how many times you've encountered fans that aren't exactly pleasant, or they can be rude and intrusive. But anyway, that happened on a flight to Jackson Hole. Next up is a situation where Richard, looking like Nick, happened to be a very big advantage. We were on a fabulous trip to Paris with friends, having the best time. Oh my God, that was such a great trip. One night, we decided to go to the famous Moulin Rouge to watch a show. Upon arrival, we were seated at a table, which was not in the best location from which to view the stage. We were a little disappointed, but not to worry. All of a sudden, a maitre d' appeared and whisked us off to a table in a prime, and I mean prime, location inside this club. We were sort of a little bit bewildered, but what we realized later was that this maitre d' had recognized my husband as a famous actor. Of course, quote unquote, our Nick gave him a big tip, and we had a wonderful time watching the show from such a great location, thanks to our famous actor who was accompanying him, my husband, Richard. This incident takes first prize. Richard and I were visiting Yellowstone National Park in January several years ago. We were with friends who had taken tours of the park during previous winters. They had such a great time, we were invited to come along for their return trip. One of the events is known as Stars, Steam, and Winter Soundscapes, which take place at night when visitors are treated to the most incredible amounts of wintry beauty in Yellowstone. I mean, it's hard to describe how lovely it is at night. The transportation is in a bombardier. Along with us was just one other couple who we did not know. We all enjoyed a very special evening. The beauty of Yellowstone on a winter's night can only be described as totally breathtaking. When the tour was over, we returned to the snow lodge. The gentleman who was with us timidly asked my husband if he would mind having his picture taken with his wife. His was a very important reason. "The only person," he said, "my wife would ever leave me for is Nick Nolte." Of course, my Nick agreed. Even though the man knew Richard was not Nick, his wife got a big, huge kick out of being photographed with a carbon copy of her idol. So there you have it, just a few amusing stories about traveling the world with my husband Richard, the Nick Nolte lookalike. And I just cannot believe that after all these years, people are still remarking on how much he looks like the famous actor. But the fun part is being able to share with you some of the amusing encounters as a result of being mistaken for a wonderful but famous American actor.